this is me personally, was when I've had injuries just like you, and my career has been riddled with injuries, like surgery after surgery,
Yeah, knee
and
surgery, Achilles.
knee surgery, pec surgery,
Yeah, as
fucking
a
now
like your
they kill.
shoulder, your deltoid.
Yeah, I tore the pec
Yeah,
in 20
is that 17?
2018 after I fought King of the Cage, and then 2019 I was recovering. Then the fucking pandemic, and then they're like, "Oh, you want to fight?" Because I think they're that was like in June of 2020. When did this shit start? 2020? Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
March 20 or
yeah, March.
something.
So like in June, they're like, "Yo, September they're starting fights again. Let's book you." I'm like, "Great, let's go." So I did some yoga. I was all stretched out. Went for a run. Pop, Achilles went right. So
Oh,
then.
oh God, I can only imagine. I would have thrown up for sure.
Let me tell. I'm gonna tell you the story. So I did yoga at the house because that was in the depths of the first lockdown, so everything was fucking locked, right? So there was we didn't have secret training yet because nobody knew what the fuck was going on. So
Yeah, it's actually like supremely dangerous because we didn't know it was the unknown.
yeah,
But yeah, go on. Sorry.
the spooky COVID. Anyway, I did a fucking hour long yoga session online, and so I'm stretched out. I'm ready to go. I'm like, okay. So I hop in the car and I drive to a field like 4 minutes away from my place. Nothing crazy. Stadium. So I got my ladder out, footwork done. I'm doing sprints done. Um, I'm sweating balls. It's fucking June. Like there's no I'm trying to paint this picture. There's no like deficiency in my muscles. I'm hydrated. I drank like fucking
Yeah,
three
you feel
liter.
good.
Feel fucking great, loose. Uh, and I'm on my last sprint. Right, I'm doing 100-meter sprints to finish off. So I was doing 20s. I did 10 of those. Then I did 10 40s, 60s, and then after 60s I'll do a few hundreds, and then I'm fucking going home. I'm done. I'm on my second last 100-meter sprint, and I plant pop, fall on the floor. Have my headphones in, so I'm fucking jamming to beats. So I thought somebody I knew came from behind and was just like, "Hey, let me push Ashton and get his attention because he's not paying attention." So I'm looking around the field, like empty stadium. I'm looking around the field, like, and I'm like, "Oh fuck, no, that was a pop." And I'm just like, I try standing up. I'm like, "Oh shit, I can't stand up."
Oh,
I'm like, fuck. So I call my wife because I have my cell phone in my pocket because I obviously have my headphones. I call my wife. I'm like, something just happened. She's like, what the fuck do you mean something just happened? You just went to the field to run. I'm like, yeah, I know.
yeah,
I'm
like the
plant.
most thing just happened. You go
Yeah,
up, you up,
I
leave it. Oh,
I planted, and I fell on the floor, babe. And I'm like, I'm in so much pain. And she's like, well, are you gonna be able to come home? I'm like, well, I'm gonna try because I drove. Right, I drove the car there because I didn't want to jog. Um, I didn't want to jog to the field because I was like, I'll do all the work in the field. Like this is like the 4 minute drive will be my mental preparation. So I fucking got my ass home and I laid on the floor and I'm like, I think I just tore something in my leg. And my wife's like, what? Ashton, how the fuck did you do this? And I'm like, I don't know. I planted. Like it's one of those injuries where like you're like, ugh, I can't even explain it, right?
yeah,
And
dang.
I got lucky that my knee surgeon, I have him on Instagram, so I sent him a message and I'm like, dude, this happened. So he got me in 2 days later to see me, and he's like, dude, your fucking Achilles is torn. And I'm like, no. And I
Oh,
was like, when can you do the surgery? At first I was like, how bad is this thing gonna be? Like, and he's like, well, you can't flex your calf. Like your calf is not connected to your ankle
dude.
right now. So
Oh,
so he's like, he goes and checks the schedule. He's like, I can do it in a month. I'm like, fuck. And we're in lockdown, right? So I'm like, a month with this? I don't know. Like I'm like, can you do it any sooner? So he's like, he leaves the room. He's like, I have a colleague. He can do it tomorrow for you. And I'm like,
no
okay.
way. That's
I'm
hype.
yeah. I'm like, okay. But then I was like, I have a few questions though. I'm like, how good is this guy? Like, I don't know if I want just anybody, but it turned out I got very fortunate that the tendon snapped right in the middle, so it was a stitch and
Awesome.
go job. It wasn't like if it had torn off the bone, I would have had to probably find a better surgeon to kind of do it, but it was a stitch and go job. But it was a miserable experience because you're in lockdown, and they won't allow my wife to come to the hospital with me. So I think I was at a friend's house last night, and he was asking me about this. So um, I have the surgery. I think I'm first of all. Let me say this. I asked the nurses there. This is during the first time. I'm like, how many surgeries do you guys normally have on a daily basis? Because there's nobody there, so I can talk to these nurses. Like this, they're not
Yeah.
busy,
You're just like,
and
okay, whatever.
they're like 40 to 50 on a day. And I'm like, how many are you doing right now? And they're like 8. I'm like, are you fucking serious? 8? 8 a day with how many people that live in Ontario, and you guys have went from 50 surgeries a day to 8? You know how many people are suffering right now, and we've done these lockdowns how many times? So that's like a firsthand experience for people who are listening. Like that's the bullshit that's going on with the the situation that's going on in the world right now. Like eight, so that you go, you can't. There's no fathom in my brain to go from 50 operations a day, whether it be for
Yeah, you went down.
something as simple as an Achilles to fucking 8. There's people dying of cancer, and you're telling me you go from 50 to 8. Fuck you guys, that's bullshit. But anyway, that's besides the point. So I'm in the hospital and I'm by myself, right? And like I'm sure you've been in the hospital before, like before surgery, you're fucking freaking out because you don't know what is gonna happen. They're gonna put you under, like, and then you just wake up, right? So
Yeah,
I'm
I had no idea. I was kind of like excited, but I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but this is kind of cool.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm
Like
just like strapped.
really, for me, it's like every time I have a surgery, which is a lot, I'm like, oh, at least I get a break. At least I have an
Yeah,
excuse
right.
to chill for fucking a week. But I woke up and my leg's in this fucking cast, and nobody's there. And normally your wife or somebody's there, and I have bad reaction to anesthetic. Normally I just throw up. I just throw up
Ooh.
every time I get anesthetic. So I wake up and I'm feeling sick as shit. Nobody's there. I'm ringing the thing. Nobody's coming. Finally, somebody comes. He's like, "Oh yeah, okay, you're awake. All right, we'll call your ride." I'm like, "Okay, how'd the surgery go?" Maybe I'd like to know about that first. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's good. The doctor's she's busy doing another thing, so he'll call your wife later." I'm like, "What the fuck is
Why
this
not?
bullshit? Why not now?" And then I'm like, "Well, what about can I get my stuff, my crutches, all that kind of stuff?" Sure, it comes, hands, throws me the bag. I'm like, "Dude, I just had surgery. Like, you really think I can fucking put my pants on right away?" Like, and so I get the crutches and I get out of bed and I'm like, I can't walk. Like, I can't do this right now. I'm too high on the anesthetic. There's no
Yeah,
way.
you're like,
Yeah, I was gonna fall down, right? And so I'm like, I can't do this. It's like, I'll get you a wheelchair. Gets me a wheelchair, pulls it up, walks away. I'm like, how the fuck do you expect me to get in this wheelchair, bro?
help me, bro.
I might be this fighter dude who's like tough and shit, but I'm not fucking invincible. And
Yeah, I'm
so
human. Just, I'm really adapted to pain. Like,
yeah,
I can do this, but I can't do this right
so
now.
he gets me in the fucking chair, and then they leave again, and I'm like, well, how am I gonna get to my ride? Like it was like I've done a few surgeries. It was quite possibly the worst experience I've had in a hospital, and I had different nurses, but I feel like because of all the shit with the pandemic, it really has Canadian healthcare has really shit the bed, right? From this, and like I've had, there's a girl at my church who she recently got the vaccine, and she had a negative side effect where she was bleeding from her lady parts really badly, right? Profusely.
Yeah,
And she's from India, so this is her first time at a Canadian hospital, and she's telling me this story, and I'm just getting angry, right? Because I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing here? So she had a negative effect, which happens, right? We're not talking about that shit right now. But she had a negative effect. She goes to emergency. They make her sit there for 6 hours before a doctor even sees her, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's nothing we can do for you. Here's some antibiotics. Send her home." She's still bleeding. So she was bleeding out of. She was having her bleeding out of her lady parts for I think 3 days, and no help. And she told me when I saw her last week, she told me that if she was in India, there's no way that they would have left her untreated. They would have done within 5 minutes of getting into that hospital, they would have done everything they could have to help her. And she's like, as a foreigner, she was ashamed of, she was excited to move here. And like now
Yeah,
she's
like
like,
everybody. Yeah,
she's like ashamed that that's the healthcare system here. And I'm not, that's a separate topic and a thing, but I mean, it's just, as athletes too, we rely on the healthcare system quite a bit because we fuck ourselves up, right? Um, but
we need their help to help us get our license because ours is still like high level of get every single thing possible.
yeah, and so I mean, uh, I, it's hard for me to verbalize how disappointed I am and how the healthcare system has kind of let everything down. And I mean, going back to fighting, like fighting in Ontario is probably the one of the harder fucking licenses to do. Um,
Yep.
and like, I mean, to shed some light on it, I did all the medicals last year because I was planning to fight in November. It didn't happen because I was having issues with my calf. So I did all the medicals in October, and I'm like, okay, I have them all done. Let me apply for the license because
Yeah.
next year I'll be able to. No, you can't use those medicals. What the fuck, man? So like we go through all this effort to get all these tests done, all this, and you can't use those medicals because the calendar year stops in December, so you have to redo all the shit. And I'm like
Yeah.
if you were to walk into Michigan, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you got them all done. Great, let's fucking go. You're in to go." But like,
Yeah.
I don't. Do you think it's just because Ontario is so fresh with MMA that it's so difficult, or like?
I think they're trying to do it in like I understand the perspective on their side to make it like safer, just make sure because there is some incidences like somewhere wherever else in the world. I don't want to name the places, but where guys will go fight, but they already have a concussion, and all of a sudden these guys are dying.
Yeah.
So it's like that's on the commission, and